Hey everyone, I'm Mitchell Chupak. It's great to be presenting for Group 6. Before we start, I just wanted to thank everyone for communicating and commenting on our discussion boards this semester. It's been great interacting with all of you. But with that out of the way, and without further ado, let's talk about the life and masterpieces of artist M.C. Escher. Maurits Cornelius Escher was a Dutch graphic artist born in Leeuwarden, a city in the northern Netherlands, on June 17th, 1998. Fun fact, Escher was born exactly 100 years and 67 days before me. Despite his prominent upbringing, MC was constantly sick as a child and was not a very good student. But one thing he particularly excelled at, as you will see, was drawing. Escher was the son of a prominent Dutch civil engineer named George Escher, who, as all fathers do, guided his early career path. George convinced MC to go to the Haarlem School of Architecture and Decorative Arts, where he attended from 1919 to 1922, learning techniques for drawing, etching, and wood carving. After Escher finished his studies in 1922 with a degree in decorative arts, he went on to one of the most formative trips of his life, visiting Florence, San Gimignano, and the Italian countryside of Volterra, Siena, and Ravello. In the same year, he traveled through Spain, visiting Madrid, Toledo, and Granada. This would serve as the basis for what historians refer to as his Italian period. During this period, till 1935, he lived in Italy and spent the spring and summer months traveling through the countryside to make his drawings. Later, in his studio in Rome, Escher would turn these sketches into wood carvings, lithographs, and linoleum cuts. He would also do etchings and sketches of structures like the ones you see here: Castle in the Air, the Drowned Cathedral, and the Tower of Babel. During the trip to Spain that I mentioned earlier, Escher stopped in a town in southern Spain called Granada. Granada is home of one of the most detailed and intricate palaces in the world, called the Alhambra. Escher was fascinated by the Moorish architecture that was later influenced by Christianity and Islamic empires who traded ownership of the castle over the span of the last 6 centuries. Escher was inspired by the structure's complex designs, and further focused his work on tessellation and repeating patterns, which often featured overlapping or interlocked images morphing into something else. This is where he began his love for these pattern design drawings, and people looked at him as a mathematical genius, even though he had very little education on the subject. In 1935, at the height of political turmoil in Italy under Mussolini, he left the country he fell in love with to move to Switzerland and soon after moved to Brussels. During this part of his life, he made money by creating posters and stamps for the government, but he still made some of his most popular works like Day and Night and Fish and Scales, which are shown in the last slide, as well as Freighter, which you can see there in the middle. During his last big move, at the beginning of World War II, he returned to Holland. He continued to create eye-opening dreamscape works such as Up and Down in 1947, Drawing Hands in 1948, and Ascending and Descending later in 1960. Some of his most popular and widely acclaimed work was created at this time, like House of Stairs in 1951, Gravity in 1952, and Three Worlds, created at the half-turn of the decade in 1955. Finally, in 1969, he finished his last work, a large woodcut with threefold rotational symmetry called Snakes. He then died in 1972 at the age of 73, leaving a legacy of more than 2,000 pieces, most of which continue to be exhibited. Today, he is recognized as a major contributor in op art, surrealism, expressionism, realism, cubism, Northern Renaissance, and modern art. But Escher's story doesn't end there. Scholars have continued to explore the mathematical implications of his work well into the 21st century. Mathematician and historian Doris Schatzschneider identifies 11 distinct strands of mathematics and scientific research anticipated or directly inspired by Escher. Most of these are classifications of things like regular tillings using the edge relationships of tiles, two-color and two-motif tillings, classifications in crystallography, which is a subsect of color symmetry, methods of metamorphosis of topological change, and methods of covering surfaces with symmetric patterns. A great example of this is Escher's algorithm, a mathematical method for generating patterns using decorated squares. This algorithm was named after Escher as an ode to his work in the area of tessellations. Escher's algorithm is used today in music to create effects in multiple genres, as well as things like computer graphics. In the later years of Escher's life, he became fascinated with the study of mathematics. He actually spent time speaking with admiring mathematicians before he created works such as Mobius Strip 2 in 1963 and The Cube with Ribbons in 1957. A similar story can be said for his fascination with the infinite triangle, which his work Knots and The Man with Cuboid help illustrate more than any of his other works. These creations, and others before it, the ones that inspired the world of mathematics, would serve as his first platform for fame. To this day, some of his most common works are shown here, like Belvedere, Waterfall, or a zoomed out look at ascending and descending, which we saw earlier in the presentation. You have likely seen these in your high school math teacher's classroom, online, or on the second floor of the Purdue Physics Building. Today I wanted to show you the life and masterpieces of M.C. Escher, and leave you with a quote from a famous mathematician and noted fan of Escher's, Kurt Gödel. Mathematicians loved Escher's work because they knew their subject was beautiful, but Escher also showed them that it was. In the last few minutes, I hope you have gotten to learn a lot about one of my favorite artists. A huge thank you goes to the MC Escher Gallery, which you can visit at mcescher.com/gallery. I highly recommend going there if you enjoyed this presentation. Lastly, thank you for listening and see you in the comments.